What's up, everybody? You've tuned in to Just Drawz, the podcast that explores hot topics and various experiences among same-gender-loving Black men. In each episode, we offer raw, vulnerable, and stripped-down perspectives to give voice to our frequently overlooked population. Here, we don't just scratch the surface, we dive deep, peeling back the layers of our experiences as well as heteronormative stereotypes. Let's get into this week's episode.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Just Drawz podcast. Tonight, we're coming from the Club Lambda basement in New York City.
What is Club Lambda?
Look it up.
Okay. Wow, we're starting like that.
We're starting like that.
Right.
Look it up. You go to X, formerly known as Twitter. You'll see everything you need to know about Club Lambda.
All right.
Yeah, it'll be very apparent the activities that happen at that club.
All right, got you. Will do.
Indeed. I'm Jeff.
I'm Darius, aka DMC.
I'm Sean.
All right. Cool beans. So you'll notice that we don't have Brandon here yet. Hopefully he'll pop in. He's maybe running a little late. He was a little under the weather. We'll see if he's able to recover, and hopefully he'll be able to join us while we're in progress. So tonight's a special episode. We've been doing Just Drawz. We've been recording this for a year. We've been doing this for a year, guys. Can you believe it? And so in that time, we've done about 26 episodes altogether. So that's actually pretty good. That averages, episode every 2 weeks, huh?
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad. So we've talked about lots of different things. You'll notice if you've been one of our early listeners, our format changed a little bit. We used to do hot topics. We kind of 86 that inside joke. Started being a little bit more conversational or having conversations that were less time dependent or less, dependent on
time sensitive.
Yeah, time sensitive, and just, more topical that, we could just you could pick up and listen to an episode and it'll still be relevant, and maybe there'll be something in it that's for you. We're also doing video more now. We're trying to get that integrated while we still test out different video services for podcasts. So we've got a lot of changes that we've done from day one. We've had different people help us get that first episode together. So I want to give a shout out to Andre. I don't think we ever really gave him any credit for those first couple of episodes and that title sequence that he did for us. So I do want to make sure that we do recognize him. I don't think we ever did that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely, we need to thank him.
Definitely. That definitely helped us have something going on here. We even had, different title sequence come up from day one. And then we also had different music that came up as well. So, we've had lots of different things happen within the year, even though we're on our second season. But yeah, we've had a lot of change for us to be a small, independent, homegrown grassroots podcast. So we're looking forward to things to come.
Yeah.
So with that, I'd like to just take a moment to just ask the panel, how it's been feeling for everyone doing this podcast for a year. I know I'm not a person that's in media. I don't, do the news. I don't have a mass comm degree. I'm just, a regular guy. And that's what we kind of, our audience has been, just regular gay guys. And I feel like that we're all everymen here on this panel as hosts. So with that, is there anything that, you guys want to just kind of start out the conversation with about this 1 year that we've been doing this?
I've enjoyed everything that we've done for the most part so far. There have been just a couple of episodes that I might not have been as engaged with, and, listening back, even after we finished with the episode, I went, okay, this one didn't feel as great as some of the other episodes did, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. I learned a lot. about the rest of the hosts. I also learned a little bit more about myself, which I'm sure we're going to get into a little bit later. But I really did enjoy, or have enjoyed, where we started and kind of how we've started to evolve a little bit with the new title sequence, with the music, with even how we incorporate some games and other fun things within the podcast. So I think that that's something that has been really beneficial to us, and that has begun to start a down a path of something consistent for all of our listeners and our subscribers.
Oh, definitely. I agree with you. What would you say, or do you feel like sharing like one of those episodes that you felt a little about, and then once you heard it, it was a little bit more, oh, okay, that was actually.
So we just recorded an episode about kinks, and while I don't have a problem with talking about sex and relationships and love and all of that stuff, like after we finished that episode, I was just like, I mean, it was okay. I enjoyed I enjoyed being able to really kind of impart some knowledge to myself and the rest of the panel and the rest of the listeners, because I had to do research on some of those things. Yeah. But it just, I don't know why I felt about it, or why I felt blah about it. It I guess it's one of those things that it's important to me, but there are other topics that we've talked about that I felt a lot more passionate about, and a lot that I felt are a lot more important to me, because I'm very introspective, and I always think about how I can improve. I think about, okay, what things could I have done better? What things did I falter, in, that I don't want to fall into a pothole again? And real talk, sex is not one of those that I feel like I falter a lot in. There's some instances where, things don't go exactly the way that they need to go, or you'd like for them to go, because I tend to be a perfectionist. But that was just one of the things that I was like, well, I don't, that episode was good, but at the moment after we finished recording it, I was like, this is whatever. And then I listened back to it and I was like, okay, this wasn't bad. This wasn't a bad episode. So, I think that all of the episodes we have highs and lows. So that was one of the ones that I kind of thought was a little, whatever.
All right. Not you being the sex perfectionist.
I mean, I'm a perfectionist in a lot of things. So yes, that was definitely one of them.
I also think I didn't participate in that particular episode, but I think it's interesting where you say, you said you had to go and do some research and all. I will say that the lead up to that one, in terms of kind of setting up what the topic was going to be, I found rather entertaining, because there had to be a distinction made between kinks and fetishes.
Yeah.
And so even though I didn't participate, there was still some entertainment value in there for me.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that we were able to get a little bit entertaining with it. I'd like for us to have gotten a little bit more entertaining, but I felt like I needed to kind of restrain just a little bit. I didn't need to go literally balls to the wall on that one with some of the language that I could have used and some of the scenarios I could have presented. So I said, okay, that may have been another reason why I was a little
more reserved
about it. Yeah, because I was trying not to be
mannish.
That guy. Yeah, right. Yeah. I was trying not to be mannish. I was trying not to be Professor Sex Xavier, one of my other handles. So I was like, let me not do that. Let me just try to, lay in the pocket on this one. So maybe that was it too.
Yeah. I mean, that was my topic. And, we've been trying to at least have at least one, I think every fourth episode has been, or recording has been something sex related, because, we're gay men, we have sex, and gay men like to have sex. So let's talk about it. I was a little more into that episode, I guess, because there were some things that, I did want to talk about. But, it felt kind of naked, recording it, because, I knew that I was putting myself out there, and, for the world to kind of see and judge. So, but I can understand, feeling a little meh about that. If that's definitely not something that you're a little bit more conservative on certain things, then that would definitely be a topic that a lot of people would shy away from talking about, just because of the subject matter. So I totally get that.
Yeah, and I didn't have a problem with talking about it, like, because you and I talk about stuff like that all the time, so I don't have a problem. It's not an issue of being prudish about it, but it was just like, okay, like, do I really want to talk about this? And then as I got into it a little bit and the memories started to come, I went, okay, I remember this and I remember that. All right, so might not be too bad.
Yeah,
Sean, I wish you were there. That would have been
it would have been interesting.
Definitely added another layer.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been very interesting for anybody. So.
You never know, because I mean, like I said, we talked about that episode and how once you listen to it, when the experience of being in it and recording it, and once it gets produced and uploaded and published, you do get a little bit of a different feeling, because there's a couple episodes that I felt the same way. I get exactly what Darius meant. I would say probably one of the ones that we did on Hot Topics, I think Majorly Funky was one that I thought was just okay during the recording process, because I was like, it's just Hot Topics. But once I listened to the playback, and we cut some stuff out because we tend to ramble on. That's another inside thing on this podcast. We've had a lot of cutting room floor things happen, like 10 minutes worth of stuff has now made it to the podcast to just try to keep us within a listenable range,
right?
Time wise. But that was one that I felt that in the recording and the subjects that we were talking about and people that we were talking about, Jonathan Majors was going through his thing at the time, and Funky and Neva, leaving Fox Soul, and then that whole thing blowing up on everyone, a couple of weeks ago, where that whole show has been dissolved. Now it's kind of like, oh, we talked about that. That was one of our hot topics. But listening back to it, I was like, oh, I think we did a pretty fair job on it. So I definitely get, feeling where the experience of sitting in your booth, your studio, the bottom of Club Lambda,
which I'm going to look
up, Castle Grayskull and World One of Super Mario, all the places that we've recorded from, literally. It's a little bit different once you get to hear it back. So
right,
definitely.
But I think having said the episode that I did feel a little odd about, I know one of my favorite episodes was really the episode that we did about friends and friendship. And so we did a 2-parter on that. I really enjoyed that because it really gave me an opportunity to think about the relationships that I have built, the relationships that I still cultivate, and the relationships that have been dissolved. There were a lot of things that I didn't talk about in that episode that I could potentially, we could do an even 3 and 4 part to that podcast, because there are so many other things that I didn't talk about. And I know one piece of feedback that I got from that episode from one of our listeners was this idea of, is there anything in our friendships where we felt that we went wrong? And because a lot of what we talked about, okay, this is the type of person that I am. This is the type of friend that I am. This is the type of, these are the ways that I show up. But the interesting thing was we didn't really talk about, okay, have there been any missteps on our part? And I think that would be another area that we can kind of really be naked, per se, on, and really talk about, okay, here are the things that I know that I have a tendency to do in friendships, or things in the ways that I'm trying to get better at showing up in my friendships and things like that. So I really enjoyed talking about that. And specifically, there was a point in the podcast where Sean and I were kind of talking back and forth, and Sean kind of helped me understand the idea of your tank being empty, and the tank being empty for certain people versus it just being depleted altogether. It's like, okay, look, I can't do any more here with you, and that was really a nice point. And even the question that Brandon asked me about one of the friends that I was talking about, if that person would ever be there for me, and I said, I couldn't answer that. So that was really truthful. That was really a vulnerable moment for me. And I enjoyed that episode. And I enjoyed the bonus episode after that, because I got a chance to actually do a duet with one of my closest female friends. And we got a chance to talk about our friendship. And we talked about how LGBTQ plus was around the time that we were in college. So I really enjoyed that whole kind of series there. What about y'all?
Yeah, that was the show I was going to highlight as well. And I think a lot of it for me is you really got to see how people navigate their relationships, both the successful ones and the ones as they either are falling apart or abruptly end, and how you navigate that, or ones that abruptly end and then resurrect. And then, I mean, I spoke about this, and then it abruptly ends again. And by then, the first time you're hurt and you kind of really don't know what to do. And then when it happens again, you're like, okay, done, whatever.
Yeah.
And don't worry about it. But it's just kind of the lessons that you learn along the way. And it also helps you, in terms of navigating, future friendships that you build and how to cultivate them.
Yeah, I like how with that episode and it being 2 parts and eventually that extra just the 2 of us with Anjali, I felt like it kind of ended up being something that we've referenced a lot that episode go afterwards, and it kind of ended up being similar to like a series, because I mean even I referenced an episode on my Summer of Discontent, Just Thoughts, so that definitely seems to be one of our more at least between the 3 of us. I'm not sure about Brandon. It clearly resonated with us. It was definitely one of our better episodes. I think that subject, and like you said, I definitely feel like we could revisit that. Basically have like an accountability episode, and just be more reflective on like, hey, I'm not a perfect friend. I've got some flaws, and I need to recognize that in ways that I can be a better friend in my friendships and my relationships, just like a person can be a better boyfriend or a husband or wife and whatnot. All of those different roles that you play in a relationship, there's, I hate to say it, always room for improvement, as cliche as that is, but it's definitely true. And when we're dealing with friendships and matters of the heart, things like that can go a long way of how you navigate, as Sean said, future relationships going forward, and how you resolve conflict and how you manage love and things like that, disagreements and agreements, or hey, I like 80-20 of this person that's my friend, or I like 50% of this friend, or this friend is in this circle, the close one, but this one is like over here and outside. This is my turn up friend, but that ain't my friend, and I'm about to tell all my business to.
Right. Exactly.
Indeed.
You have a favorite moment or episode?
I do. My favorite is probably the Christmas episode. I thought that was very fun, because it kind of took us all back to our childhood or younger days, and those moments of time, like my story with the Christmas gift wrap basically just took me right back to that place. I can remember what the house looked like at that time, the furniture, how my room was set up. Like I was just right back there in 1989. So that was very fun to record. And actually, when we recorded that episode, I was actually at home.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was at home when we recorded it. So because I had to produce it on my laptop, which didn't have all of the software and stuff on it. So yeah, that was also a cool thing, is that I actually was in the room where I was playing that Genesis
nice
on that episode.
Well, that was good. Yeah.
I'd say the Christmas episode was the other one where I think it helped you learn a lot about each individual person and kind of what gift they cherished the most and why. And so I thought that was one where it produced a memorable moment, simply because, you were pulled into these memories that each of us had and why it was meaningful for us. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I enjoyed that episode, but that was another one that was for me. Like I had my story, and I was like, okay, this was good, but I didn't feel like it had as much impact as I think it did for me, as it did for maybe our listeners or for everybody else on the panel. So I wanted that story, or I wanted that memory to kind of have a little bit of impact. But again, that's just me being a little bit more of a perfectionist. Like, okay, yeah, this has got to hit, this way. So that was what it was. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the memories. I enjoyed listening to you guys' memories more so than I did saying my own or giving my own. So that was what made that episode for me.
Yeah, because it was, for me, I want to say, like, I think a lot of the feedback that I got on that particular episode was people was like, I want to have Sean's life.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, oh, that's how they're doing it. They're doing it big over there. Sean was doing his big one back then. And I was like, yeah, that would probably be the same situation. I want to go to the fancy Christmas feast.
Overseas, right? Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And be starving for food and trying not to eat everything because you're waiting on dinner. Trying not to eat all the hors d'oeuvres. So yeah, that was dope.
Indeed. So we've been doing this, and I want to say that it's been a learning process for me. So a little bit of my background and how we kind of got to where we are. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. So I'm more of a tech person. I work with computers, and I just started working with audio as a way to kind of like do overdubs of songs. So basically, if you don't know what that is, it's basically you take a song, a music track, and you can add beats and things to it from another song, and basically kind of like make mashups. So fiddled with that a little bit, and I knew how to work SoundForge. That's the software that I use to do that. And so I knew how I could splice and put the audio together. So for me, as far as audio visual enthusiast, I've learned how to operate these software platforms to a way like, oh, I got this down. Like before, production used to take me so long because I had to figure out how to do this and figure out how to do that. Like I didn't know how to do a title sequence. I didn't know how to do the green screening for like the lower thirds, which is like on our more recent episodes, the little logo that you see at the bottom of the screen. Little things like that were just things that, again, I'm not a mass comm major. Don't work in television production or anything like that. So learning this stuff on the go has been fun. And one of the reasons why we didn't do video at the start was because I knew that it was going to be a big learning curve and audio would just be easier to work with. And the main reason that we've been trying to transition to video is just because that's just the way that, like what's going to get you views these days, especially going on to YouTube, which is our platform that has the most subscribers. It's been a video platform since day one, and they integrated the podcasting feature into YouTube. So that's definitely the direction that YouTube/Google /Alphabet is trying to get people to go. So they're noticing what the trend is for the younger generation. So I appreciate learning that stuff technically, but I also feel like I've learned a lot more about myself by being able to express myself in this format and platform, and just kind of like exposing myself, being naked and vulnerable, stripped down,
and stripped down. Yeah, stripped down.
Because once we put something out here, it's out there. I can't take it back. It's on the internet forever, even for our now 60 subscribers, by the way, that we just reached today or yesterday. So for those 60 people, I'm putting myself out there. I don't know who's on the other side of the screen, at
Right.
least not all 60 of them. So, they could screen record this and be like, hey, I saw that dude and he did this type of deal. But, that's the risk. You know that going on in this platform. You put it on the internet's forever. And, I feel like I can stand on what I said. I said what I said.
Right.
So
Right,
that's
Nene.
right. So definitely learning about myself more and feeling a lot more confident. Someone actually recognized me the other day out of those 60 people at an event. So that was kind of cool too.
That's dope.
I know. I was like, oh, cool, you know me.
And you jumped up and kicked your heels together.
Right.
Like, I love what you do for me, Toyota.
Exactly.
Dope.
So that was actually kind of cool to get a little bit of real life recognition and, me just doing my thing and us doing our thing here on this podcast. But yeah, that confidence has gone up a little bit more. I've gotten better with the video and audio recording and doing this. I'm not going to say that I'm going to do this professionally at all. I've got a full-time job, but you never know. So that's definitely something that I feel like I can take away from this experience and, looking forward to getting better at this whole process and however that leads us as a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
What about you guys?
Sean, I'll let you go.
I mean, my biggest takeaway is much more elementary. I just think it helped reinforce how important it is to hear from voices that help break stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say that's probably my biggest takeaway.
Dope. I've learned that I don't like being on camera, but I understand that is the way of things. That is how we've got to do things. I actually, when we first started this, one of the things that I hated was I hated the sound of my own voice. And I've gotten better with that now that I've listened to myself a bunch of times and I've listened to myself in the car and all of that stuff. I've learned not to kind of critique myself as harshly as I did before, because I think the level of frequency that I'm hearing myself, I'm getting more accustomed to it. And, everybody says, oh, you have a nice voice. You have a nice voice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. And I go, ugh, I cringe sometimes when I hear myself.
But you do have a good voice.
Well,
but it's also interesting to me that, you feel that way because, you're in front of a classroom 9 months out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I can hear myself like when I'm speaking, but like to hear myself on playback is completely different. Even when I record lectures for my classes, like I hate listening to my lectures. The only reason I'm listening to it is to make sure that I got all the information down. That's the only reason. I'm like sometimes scrolling through. And then of course, being on camera, like I looked at the I guess we've only done one episode where we've been fully on camera, and that was the Kinks episode.
Yes.
So we've tried a couple.
We tried it at one. We had a little technical issue with that one.
So we ended up not doing that. But so looking at myself on camera, and I actually just mentioned this to my sister a few minutes ago. I was like, I hate looking at myself on camera. And so she was like, well, you're just being critical, of yourself. But I don't like that. I'd rather hear myself than to see myself. And I was just telling everybody right before we started recording here that sometimes when I'm thinking about stuff, and I didn't realize I do this, but when I think about stuff, I have a tendency to look up or I look away, because what that does is it helps me focus on what I'm thinking about. And on camera, when you're watching yourself do that shit, like it's ridiculous. Like, I'm like, okay, why am I looking up? What the hell am I looking at? Who am I looking at? What is this about? So I said, I'm trying my best to kind of focus more so, or find a spot on the screen that I can actually focus on so that I'm not looking up and looking off and doing all of this extra bullshit. So I have learned, those little things, that I have those little quirks about myself. And even though when I'm teaching, I don't use a lot of vocal fillers, I find myself when I'm in conversation that I use a lot more vocal fillers. So I'm learning a lot about how other people would perceive me as, on the outside, but I don't think about that stuff because I guess I've been doing it so long. So I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm hopefully getting better to the point that I'll be able to accept myself a little bit more, my voice, the way that I look on camera, all of that stuff. So,
yeah, it's very different. I mean, I've heard myself, playing with things as a kid, tape recorders and stuff like that, and would hear the playback and be like, I sound like that. And I get it, because I'd be like, man, I sound so gay, or I sound so white, oh, I sound so country.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
You hear all of that negative stuff that, the people, do I really sound like that? But I get it. I've gotten used to my voice now. I guess, like you said, the repetition, but I totally understand. Like I didn't like it. I hated the way it sounded. Being on camera definitely is something different, because it's funny, because the other podcasts that that are in studios, they don't look directly at the camera, because they've got production and they've got camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, so they're actually looking at the other panelists and other hosts, so they don't have to just kind of engage with you guys, the audience, this way, where we're looking directly at the camera, because we're not in the room looking to the left or looking to the right, of the panelists, unless we want to look directly into the camera to make a point and break the fourth wall type of deal. So, it does feel a little different doing it that way, this way. But I mean, other podcasts do the same thing. And I wonder, do we just do that because we're all on individual screens? Are we doing that because everyone's worked from home and everyone's on Zoom and Teams now, and everyone's looking directly at the camera? But it feels more, I guess, podcasty doing it this way. And other places, other podcasts feel more TV show, because they're not looking at the camera, they're looking at their other panelists. And if it wasn't for the fact that they probably have headphones and the mic, in frame with them too, you never really know that they were actually on a podcast, just a regular talk show. Other than that, it's another thing that I think is kind of odd, is that on a podcast, it's okay to have your headphones on, your monitor or whatever, and the mic be in frame instead of like hanging from off the sky.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just clipped on. We've just kind of accepted that, oh, you're doing this at home, you don't have to be all super professional about it. So yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah. And again, that most of that stuff is stuff that I've learned just about myself. And I think this whole process has been, cathartic for me, in a sense that I've learned about how I show up, and also things that I probably didn't talk a lot about, except for in very intimate moments with people. I actually am sharing with everybody, and that didn't feel as jarring to me as I kind of thought it would be. And I'm kind of enjoying that. And so, like, again, I let my sister hear the Kinks episode, and I was sitting there going, okay, this is not the episode that you need to be listening to, because you don't need to know some of this stuff about me. You don't need to know that. That's none of your business. That's yeah, it's not, but she listened to it, and actually she was on the phone with someone, and they were engaging in the conversation because of what was being said on the podcast. So I was like, oh, that was kind of dope, I guess, so.
Yeah. I mean, if what we're doing spurs some type of discussion and discourse and dialogue amongst others, hey, that's, great. I don't know. I think when we started this, I was just thinking, just going to be the four of us, just a couple of guys just talking, and we just kind of had like a basic format for what we wanted, or what I thought, each of us wanted the podcast to kind of be. And we just kind of like threw stuff on the wall and just kind of saw what stuck. And I think we're still, doing that. We're still refining ourselves, which is great. Developing what we want the podcast to be and what types of messages that, we want to convey out, as our identity on this podcast. I mean, I do feel like we know what our target is, as far as like a little bit slightly different section of the gay community, Black gay community, that, the regular guys is what I say. I've try to steer away from using the term super masculine or masculine all the time, because, you know, that gets this weird type of, oh, you're not masculine, girl, you be doing this, all that type of deal, because, you know, they'll come for you once you start, you know, getting into that. But I'll say that regular everyday guys, not the more, you know, on the scene, quote unquote, scene type of guys. And I feel like we do have that market, that, or at least that's the market that we're going for, because that's who we are. You know, so
Sean, I have a question for Sean though.
Yeah,
Sean, in some of the places or some of the people that you may have shared the podcast with, have you received any feedback about the podcast as a whole or any of the hosts?
No, definitely not directly about hosts and stuff like that. I think it was more along the lines of what my learnings were, as well as people just appreciated that, you know, they were hearing voices that kind of break those stereotypes and are not what normally gets highlighted in media as speaking for the community and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what, you know, was important. I think part of, you know, the desire to, you know, do this as individuals and coming together was just that, you know, I didn't really feel there was that type of voice. I mean, there are some out there, don't get me wrong. There are definitely some podcasts that have similar guys to us out there. You know, but a lot of what you see, or what's gotten a lot of trending and a lot of the trends and what's getting traction, has been the guys that are a little bit more feminine, and we love them. Them to death. You know, no shade against them. There's space and room for everyone. We all can eat in this podcast space. You know, but I just don't feel like we saw a lot of us regular average Joes types out there in this podcasting Black gay world. So, you know, if we're not going to be the most popular, that's fine. If someone sees this later on and they're like, hey, you know what, I think I can do something similar to this and do it better, I'm all for it, because I'll watch. I will definitely watch, because that's the type of content that, you know, we were looking for a little bit more. At least I know that that's what I was looking for. So I feel like we're putting out what we want in this space.
Yeah, definitely.
You're not all talking about Emmys and Oscars and all that kind of good stuff. There's more content out there than kind of the typical topics that are covered.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely like talking about hot topics. Don't get me wrong. That basically just kind of came down to just, you know, being able to produce those episodes in a timely manner. Like, if we were streamed live, I'd be all for it. You know, if we ever get picked up by, you know, podcasting service, or, you know, get a studio behind us, you know, we can probably bring that back. It's just that, you know, home growing it like the way that we're doing it is just not feasible for me in my time. And I think even if we did, you know, outsource it to get it, I feel like the way that I would want it to be, yeah, it would be, we really have to like work with a producer or a third party to do that, which is fine, but that's also going to cost money. Which we don't have. But, you know, hey, if you want to sponsor us, we're all for it. You know, hit those DMs.
Yeah, we absolutely will take all sorts of sponsorships.
So
come on with it.
You want us
we'd love to have you
sell some products. You know, you got fabric softener or like a drink or something like that. You know, send us samples. We are not above it.
Yeah.
Not at all. All right. Cool beans. So I think, you know, I've covered everything that I feel like, you know, we're at a good stopping point here. I wish that Brandon could have, you know, hopped in on us. But I do want to take a little bit of time, at least a short bit, to just kind of, again, I want to call back to Andre again for helping us with that first title sequence and all of that, the first couple episodes that we used it on. Another shout out to Anjali for being one of our guests. She's a two-time guest on here, as well as John, who stepped in a couple of times as a good substitute when we've had people absent. So definitely love you guys and the help
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. That you coming in and, coming to our little small podcast and, being vulnerable and stripped down with us. Definitely appreciate and hope to have you guys and lady on the show in the future.
What do you think the future is going to hold for us? Or what would you like to see? I'll say that too.
What I would like for us to see, I would like us to, keep trending on the up on our follower and subscriber numbers. I feel like we're doing a little bit more effort on that on social media. So that's reflective. We're getting out what we've been putting into it recently. So I would like to us get to a point where, for me, I guess the next milestone is going to be those 100, those next 40 subscribers on YouTube. And then from there, 500. And then from there, 1,000. And maybe by that time, we'll be able to get some YouTube ads revenue coming on. And, that'll be great. But yeah, so we just have to, I think production wise, we'll get a little bit better. Hopefully with monetization, we can actually outsource some of the production so we can just focus on content and maybe one day get to a point where we've got live shows and merchandise, coffee mugs and, sweat rags and eyeglass cases,
sweatsuits and t-shirts and socks with the balls on the back.
Fans and things like that. Go get a little Pride fan, clack, clack, clack. Get some of that going on. I'm not above any of that. So, but yeah, that's what I would like for us to be. This I think that we could get to that point, and fingers crossed that we, do the needful and get things going.
I agree with pretty much everything that you said. I'm really big on I'm the behind the scenes kind of logistics dude. So I'm the one that's like, okay, let's have a format for how we open. Let's have a format for how we close. Let's have a script for this. Let's say this. I'm also the one that's about branding. So I'm like, okay, let's come up with some logos. Let's come up with some names for our subscribers. So then, when we engage with them, we can go, oh, you're a this, you're a that, with our podcast. I'd love to have all of that and really just kind of build a community within the podcast world and, really kind of outside for us to make those connections and for us to bring people in and for people to go, okay, I'm really excited to see what they're going to talk about next. Even if it's an episode that they're like, okay, I don't think I can really have any connection with, but you listen to it and go, okay, yeah, I can have some connection with that. So I'd like to just see us, reach more people and have more people enjoy who we are and what we're about.
Yep. Totally get that. Sean, do you have anything?
I don't think I can add anything more of value. I think you guys pretty much covered it.
Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to wrap the show up. Thanks everyone for listening. And again, another shout out to Brandon. Hopefully you'll get better and we'll see you on the next recording.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Just Drawz 1 year in. And we'll see what we got for you a year from now.
Yeah. Thank y'all. We love you.
Peace.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Now be sure to like, share, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and Spotify at Just Drawz. That's JustDrawz. Until next time,